The stars looked different from the observation deck of the EDF Vanguard. General Alan Harris stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the massive alien ships that surrounded Earth's flagship. After decades of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, they finally had their answer. Not only were they not alone, but they were very, very late to a very large party. "General, they're ready for us," said Captain Susan Miller, her uniform crisp and perfect despite the tension that showed in her eyes. Harris nodded. How many species did intelligence say were part of this galactic empire? Over 200, sir. The Galactic Empire of United Species, GEUS for short, has been expanding for nearly 10,000 years according to the data they shared. 10,000 years. While humans were just figuring out agriculture, these beings had already been traveling between stars. Harris straightened his uniform and followed Captain Miller toward the shuttle bay. The diplomatic team consisted of 12 humans, military officers, scientists, and government representatives chosen to make first official contact. The shuttle journey to the GEUS flagship took only minutes, but to Harris, it felt like crossing a line that humanity could never step back from. The alien ship was enormous. Their shuttle passed through an energy field into a docking bay large enough to hold a small city. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved with purpose through the area. Some had too many limbs, others floated rather than walked, and colors ranged across the spectrum and beyond. "Remember," Harris said quietly to his team as they prepared to disembark, "we observe everything. We commit to nothing." The welcoming committee waited at the base of the shuttle ramp. At the front stood High Chancellor Zorthol, a tall, mantis-like being with 4 arms and gleaming compound eyes that shifted color as they moved. Behind the Chancellor stood representatives from at least 20 different species. General Harris, the Chancellor, spoke through a translation device. "Welcome to the Fellowship of Galactic Civilization. This day marks a historic moment for both our peoples." Harris stepped forward and bowed slightly. "High Chancellor, on behalf of Earth and all humanity, we thank you for this warm welcome." The meeting chamber was a vast room with a circular table. The human delegation sat on one side, the varied representatives of the GEUS on the other. For 2 hours, they exchanged information about their respective civilizations. The aliens seemed particularly interested in how quickly humans had advanced technologically. "From first flight to space travel in less than a century," remarked Cry Leth, a blue-skinned scholarly being. "Most remarkable. And concerning." Harris caught the subtle shift in tone. "Concerning, Ambassador. Your species advances quickly, adapts quickly. Your history suggests these traits develop through conflict." The room grew quiet. Harris maintained a neutral expression, but noticed how the alien delegates exchanged glances. High Chancellor Zorthol leaned forward. "General Harris, the GEUS offers humanity full membership in our empire. With this comes access to technologies beyond your current understanding, trade routes spanning thousands of worlds, and cultural exchange to enrich your society." "That is most generous," Harris replied carefully. "And what would be expected of Earth in return?" "All member species contribute to the collective good," the Chancellor said. "Currently, our most pressing need is support against a rebel faction known as the Void Collective. They threaten stability from the Outer Rim. All members provide military assistance as needed." Harris saw several of his team shift uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. It was a recruitment effort. "I notice you've taken particular interest in our military history," Harris said, looking directly at the Chancellor's compound eyes. "Perhaps that's why you've approached Earth now, rather than a century ago." The aliens didn't answer immediately. Harris had hit close to truth. "Before we consider your generous offer," Harris continued, studying the reactions around the table, "I should point out something important about humanity's approach to warfare." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "After reviewing the information you've shared about this conflict, I believe you should reconsider. Perhaps humanity should remain neutral in your wars." The Chancellor's eyes shifted to a deep purple. "For what reason?" General. Harris looked around the table, making eye contact with each alien delegate. For everyone's sake. Silence filled the room after General Harris's warning. High Chancellor Zorthol's compound eyes shifted from purple to a deep red. The other alien delegates whispered among themselves. An interesting perspective, General, Zorthol finally said. We would like to understand it better. With your permission, we will send a delegation to Earth to learn more about humanity. 3 days later, Ambassador Kryleth led the GEUS assessment team to Earth. The blue-skinned humanoid alien moved with grace despite Earth's stronger gravity. 5 other aliens of different species accompanied him, each specialists in various fields. We appreciate your openness, Kryleth said as General Harris guided them through the United Nations Military History Museum in Geneva. Most new species are eager to share their achievements, but reluctant to reveal their conflicts. Harris nodded. Understanding our past helps prevent repeating our mistakes. The alien delegation watched the historical footage with growing discomfort. World War I trenches filled with mud and bodies. World War I cities reduced to rubble. Nuclear mushroom clouds rising over test sites. Guerrilla fighters hiding in jungles. Urban warfare in destroyed cities. You fought yourselves? Asked Vex Tra, a reptilian military analyst with scales that changed color with her emotions. Currently, they were a pale yellow fear. For most of our history, Harris confirmed, we've only been truly united for the past 30 years. The aliens exchanged glances when they reached the section on modern orbital defense systems. Humanity had prepared for possible alien threats by developing weapons that could target and destroy vessels in space. Your species developed planet-to-space weapons without knowing if other intelligent life existed, Kryleth asked. We tend to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best, Harris replied. Meanwhile, at the White House, President Nancy Morgan met with her cabinet and military advisors. The Oval Office felt crowded with 15 people discussing the GUS proposition. The technology they're offering would advance us by centuries, said Secretary of Science Barbara Allen. Medical breakthroughs alone could eliminate most diseases. But at what cost? Asked Defense Secretary William Grant. They're fighting a war and need soldiers. Intelligence Officer Jack Powell stood up and activated a holographic display. Based on communications we've intercepted between their ships, the Galactic War is going worse for them than they admit. The Void Collective has taken control of several key systems in the past year. They're desperate for fresh troops, General Harris added, having joined the meeting after leaving the aliens with the museum curator. And resources. Earth has both in abundance. President Morgan frowned. What's your assessment, General? You've spent the most time with them. Harris walked to the window and looked out at the Washington Monument in the distance. They're not telling us everything. This Void Collective, we don't know their side of the story. The GEUS wants our military capabilities, but I don't think they truly understand what that means. Explain, the president said. The aliens fight wars differently. They have rules, boundaries, limitations. From what I've seen, they wage war to maintain balance and order. Harris turned to face the room. That's not how humans fight. What do you mean? Asked Vice President Eric Dawson. When humans go to war fully committed, we don't fight for balance. We fight to win, completely and absolutely. Total war is something these aliens have never experienced. Harris's voice grew quiet. If we join their conflict, I believe it will escalate beyond their control. President Morgan studied him carefully. You truly believe getting involved would be that dangerous? I do, Madam President. What they're asking for seems simple to them. Troops and resources. But they don't understand our history or our nature. Harris looked around the room at each person. If humanity enters this war, we won't just participate in it. We'll transform it. And that transformation might horrify even us. A heavy silence fell over the room. They don't understand what they're asking for, Harris concluded. And I'm not sure we're ready to show them. The White House dining room sparkled with crystal and silver. President Morgan had ordered the best china for the formal dinner with the GEUS delegation. Humans and aliens sat alternating around the long table, an attempt at showing unity. High Commander Drulixar had arrived that morning. Unlike the scholarly Kryleth, Drulixar was clearly a warrior. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with gray skin like polished stone, the alien military leader dominated the room. "Your planet is quite beautiful," Drulixar said to President Morgan, "rich in resources that would benefit the Empire greatly." "We're proud of Earth," she replied carefully. "Humanity has worked hard to repair environmental damage from our industrial age." Drulixar nodded. "All developing species face similar challenges. With GEUS technology, you could complete those repairs in a decade rather than a century." General Harris watched the exchange while picking at his food. The aliens had been provided specially prepared meals suitable for their various biologies. The human guests ate roast beef and vegetables. "High Commander," Harris said, "I'm curious about your military structure. How do member species integrate into your command system?" "An excellent question, General." Drulixar seemed pleased to discuss military matters. New members typically form their own units under GEUS command oversight. This preserves unit cohesion while allowing for proper tactical integration. "And the current conflict with the Void Collective," Harris continued. "How long has it been active?" A slight hesitation. "The current phase has lasted approximately 20 of your Earth years." "Current phase." Secretary Grant caught the wording. "How many phases have there been?" Ambassador Kryleth intervened. "The conflict has evolved over time. Different species have joined both sides at various points." President Morgan set down her fork. "What exactly does the Void Collective want? What are their demands?" The aliens exchanged glances. "They are rebels who reject the stability and prosperity of the Empire," Drulixar said dismissively. "Like all terrorists, they use destruction to advance their agenda." Harris noted the non-answer. The commander had said what the collective was, not what they wanted. "Madam President," Drulixar said, changing the subject, "we had hoped to return with your commitment to join our alliance. Our fleet must depart your system within 2 days, and we would be honored to announce Earth's membership." The pressure was clear. President Morgan maintained her diplomatic smile. "We're still considering your generous offer, Commander. Such important decisions require careful thought." Drulixar's expression hardened. "With respect, Madam President, neutrality is not a luxury the galaxy can afford in these times. General Harris seems to have concerns about human involvement, but I assure you they are unfounded." The commander turned to Harris. "Your species would be well protected within our military structure. You would only be asked to contribute what you can reasonably provide." Harris set down his glass. "That's precisely what concerns me, Commander. Your understanding of what humans can reasonably provide in warfare may differ greatly from reality." "I doubt that, General. We have studied many species and their combat capabilities." Harris stood suddenly. "With your permission, Madam President." She nodded, curious. Harris activated a small device. A holographic display appeared above the dining table, showing historical battle footage. D-Day landings at Normandy, the siege of Stalingrad, jungle fighting in Vietnam. "These are not our proudest moments," Harris explained as the aliens watched with growing discomfort, "but they show how humans fight when truly committed." The display changed to show psychological warfare tactics, guerrilla operations, and city fighting techniques that made some of the aliens visibly recoil. "Our species spent millennia fighting each other before we found peace," Harris said calmly. "We've perfected the art of war in ways you cannot comprehend." He looked directly at Drulixar. "You should let humanity stay detached in your war, because if we join, it won't be your war anymore. It will be ours, and we don't fight to maintain balance." Harris paused. "We fight to win, at any cost." The dining room fell completely silent. For the first time, Drulixar looked genuinely unsettled. 2 weeks after the dinner, General Harris stood in the Pentagon's main briefing room. The wall screens showed the compromise that had been reached despite his warnings. Earth would provide military advisors, but no combat troops to the GUS forces. Colonel Kelly, your team departs tomorrow, Harris said to the woman standing at attention before him. Remember, your mission is strictly observational. You are to advise only, not engage in combat operations. Colonel Samantha Kelly nodded. She was tall with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. Understood, General. My team is prepared. I chose you because you understand restraint, Harris continued. The President believes this compromise protects our interests while securing GUS technology. I'm not convinced. You think they'll try to pull us deeper into their war, Kelly said. It wasn't a question. I know they will. Harris handed her a small device. This contains private communication protocols outside GUS monitoring. Report directly to me if the situation changes. The next day, Kelly led her team of 12 advisors aboard the GUS command ship. The human team included tactical specialist Ryan Peterson, weapons expert Frank Martinez, and communications officer Linda Carter. They were assigned quarters in the diplomatic section, away from the main military operations. Ambassador Kryleth greeted them personally. Colonel Kelly, welcome aboard the Celestial Harmony. High Commander Drolexer sends his regards and will meet with you once we reach the Arcturus outpost. Thank you, Ambassador, Kelly replied. My team is eager to observe GUS military operations and provide whatever insights we can. Kryleth's blue skin rippled slightly, their equivalent of a polite smile. We hope to learn from each other, Colonel. The massive ship entered faster than light travel, a smooth transition that impressed the humans. Peterson whistled softly as he watched the stars blur on the observation deck. This tech alone is worth the political compromise, he said to Kelly. Their engine efficiency is centuries beyond ours. Kelly wasn't convinced. Technology always comes with strings attached. Keep your eyes open during the briefings. 3 days into their journey, emergency alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors as aliens rushed to battle stations. What's happening? Kelly demanded as Kryleth hurried past their quarters. Void collective ships, the ambassador explained quickly. They shouldn't be in this sector. Please remain in your quarters where it's safe. Kelly gathered her team immediately. This is exactly what we came to observe. Martins, Peterson with me. The rest of you monitor communications and gather what intelligence you can. Against Kryleth's instructions, Kelly led her small team toward the command center. The ship rocked with impacts as they navigated the corridors. Their defensive protocols are too predictable, Peterson observed as they watched GUS crew members respond to the attack. Look at how they're positioning their shields, always in the same pattern. A massive explosion shook the ship. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by dim emergency lighting. A voice over the intercom reported that attackers had boarded in the engineering section. They've cut off the command center, Martin said, checking a ship schematic on his tablet. We're in trouble. Kelly made a quick decision. We're moving to defensive section 6. It's between the attackers and the bridge. Colonel, we were ordered not to engage, Linda Carter reminded her. We're not engaging. We're observing from a better position, Kelly replied with a grim smile. When they reached Section 6, chaos reigned. GEUS security forces were falling back in an orderly retreat, but their tactics were failing against the Void Collective soldiers. Dark, shadowy figures that moved with unexpected speed. Kelly watched the GEUS defensive line crumble as they'd followed their standard protocols. The aliens fought with discipline but lacked adaptability. This isn't working, she muttered, then made a decision that would change everything. Peterson, Martinez, I need a distraction. Non-standard human tactics. We're just advisors, Martinez reminded her. Kelly pointed to the advancing enemy. Tell that to them. If they reach the bridge, we're all dead. Peterson grinned. Finally, some action. He turned to the confused GEUS security chief. Follow our lead if you want to live. Using improvised tactics and unpredictable movements, the small human team reorganized the defense. Instead of the rigid formations the GEUS used, they created flexible response teams that adapted to the attackers' movements. The tide of battle slowly turned. The humans hadn't come to fight, but when forced to defend themselves, they showed a creativity in combat that stunned both their allies and enemies. General Harris watched the video footage for the third time. The recording showed Colonel Kelly and her team defending a section of the GEUS command ship against Void Collective attackers. What had been meant as an advisory mission had turned into direct combat involvement. Worse, the footage had been transmitted throughout the GEUS fleet as an example of human combat effectiveness. "They used us," Harris said to President Morgan in the Situation Room. "This surprise attack gave them exactly what they wanted, proof that humans are valuable in combat." The President looked troubled. Colonel Kelly had no choice. They were defending themselves. "I don't blame Kelly. She acted correctly given the circumstances." Harris paused the video at an image of GEUS commanders watching the humans with a mixture of awe and fear. But now the entire empire has seen what humans can do. The pressure to fully commit will increase. Before President Morgan could respond, an aide rushed in. "Madam President, we have an emergency transmission from Europa Research Station." The main screen switched to a chaotic scene. The research outpost on Jupiter's moon Europa was under attack. Alarms blared as scientists and security personnel ran for cover. The camera shook as explosions rocked the base. "This is Dr. Howard from Europa Station," a man's voice said over the footage. "We are under attack by ships matching Void Collective descriptions. We have multiple casualties and failing life support. Requesting immediate." The transmission cut to static. The room fell silent. Europa Station housed 300 scientists and support staff, all civilians working on deep space communications research. "How long until our nearest ships can reach them?" the President asked. 10 hours minimum," Defense Secretary Grant replied. "And those are just patrol vessels, not combat ships." Harris's face hardened. "The Void Collective is targeting us directly now. This changes everything." 3 days later, after a failed rescue mission found only destruction at Europa Station, General Harris stood at attention during the memorial service. The list of the dead included Dr. Lisa Chen, a brilliant physicist who had been his colleague before taking the position on Europa. They had worked together developing Earth's defense systems before first contact. President Morgan's speech was brief but powerful. This unprovoked attack on a civilian research facility cannot go unanswered. The Void Collective has made it clear that humanity is already involved in this war, whether we chose to be or not. Public outrage swept across Earth. News channels showed continuous footage of the destroyed station. Protests outside the White House demanded action. Military recruitment centers reported lines around the block. In an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council, President Morgan announced her decision. "In light of this direct attack on human civilians, I am authorizing limited military engagement against Void Collective forces that threaten human interests." General Harris watched from the side of the room, his warnings now overshadowed by the demand for justice. After the session, the President found him staring out a window. "I know you still have concerns, Alan," she said quietly, using his first name outside of formal settings. "But we can't just stand by after this." "I understand the necessity," Harris replied, "but we must maintain strict control over our level of involvement. Admiral Garcia will lead our first battle fleet. The rules of engagement are clear: defensive operations only, protecting human interests, and GEUS allies within our sector." Harris nodded. Admiral Paul Garcia was a level-headed commander, not prone to rash decisions. If anyone could maintain the delicate balance, it was him. 2 weeks later, Admiral Garcia led Earth's first military fleet into GEUS territory. 12 advanced warships, newly equipped with modified GEUS technology, formed the core of humanity's response. Garcia's orders were clear: follow GEUS protocols, maintain discipline, and avoid unnecessary escalation. But as his fleet approached the Proxima Centauri waypoint, long-range sensors detected an ambush waiting for them. Void Collective ships, Garcia's executive officer confirmed. At least 20 vessels hiding in the asteroid field. Garcia studied the tactical display. The standard GUS response would be to call for reinforcements and hold position. But the Admiral had other ideas. "Prepare for combat maneuvers," he ordered, "and open a channel to all ships." Garcia smiled grimly as he addressed his fleet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to show the galaxy how humans fight when provoked. Execute Battle Plan Theta." Back on Earth, General Harris felt a chill as he received Garcia's battle plan. This was exactly what he had feared. The beginning of humanity's transformation of the Galactic War. News of Admiral Garcia's victory at Proxima Centauri spread quickly through both the GEUS Empire and Earth. The human fleet had not only survived the ambush, but had destroyed 17 Void Collective vessels, while losing only one damaged ship. Most shocking to the GEUS commanders was how Garcia had achieved this victory. He used damaged ships as bait, High Commander Drulixer said, his voice a mixture of admiration and horror as he briefed General Harris and President Morgan via holographic communication. "The Mercy Protocol requires us to avoid targeting damaged vessels until all functioning enemy ships are neutralized. The Void Collective follows this protocol as well," President Morgan asked. "It is a foundation of civilized warfare throughout the galaxy," Drulixer confirmed. Admiral Garcia exploited this expectation. Harris kept his expression neutral. Garcia had used Earth's wounded ships to draw the enemy close, then sprung his trap. Effective, yes, but it broke one of the fundamental rules of engagement that the galactic community had followed for thousands of years. "We fight to win, Commander," Harris said simply. "I warned you about this." After the meeting, Colonel Kelly requested a private call with General Harris. She had been stationed on the GEUS command carrier observing their response to the battle. "General, something isn't right," Kelly said once the secure connection was established. "My team has been analyzing captured Void Collective data, and we found something disturbing." "Go on," Harris said. "The rebellion didn't start the way the GEUS told us. We found records indicating it began after the GEUS encountered a previously unknown species in the outer rim called the Nex. This species possesses unique psychic abilities that the GEUS wanted to use as weapons." Harris frowned. "They were trying to conscript them." "Worse," Kelly replied. "The records suggest the GEUS attempted to forcibly integrate the Nex into their military structure. When they resisted, the conflict began. And now the Nex are key members of the Void Collective," Harris concluded. "Yes, sir. And there's more. This isn't the first time the GEUS has targeted a species for their military value." Kelly's expression was grim. "We found a pattern of the GEUS incorporating species specifically for their warfare capabilities, often through manipulation or coercion, like they're trying to do with us," Harris said quietly. "Exactly, sir. Humanity wasn't invited as equals but as weapons. They identified our warfare capability as valuable and sought to exploit it." Harris thanked Kelly for the information and immediately arranged an emergency meeting with President Morgan and the United Earth Council. In the White House Situation Room, he presented the evidence. "They lied to us from the beginning," Secretary Grant said angrily after reviewing the data. "We need to withdraw from this conflict immediately." "It's not that simple," President Morgan replied. "We're already engaged, and the Void Collective has attacked our people directly." "We need more information," Harris said. "Colonel Kelly's team is continuing to analyze the captured data, but we're working under GEUS supervision. They're limiting what we can access." The discussion was interrupted when an aide announced that High Chancellor Zor Thul had arrived on Earth unannounced, requesting an urgent meeting. The mantis-like alien leader was shown into the room, his compound eyes shifting through colors rapidly, a sign of agitation. "President Morgan, General Harris, I came as soon as I received word of Colonel Kelly's investigations." "So you're monitoring our communications," Harris said coldly. "For security purposes only," the Chancellor replied. "This war has many complexities that perhaps we should have been more forthcoming about." "You mean you should have told us the truth," President Morgan said, "that you're recruiting us as weapons, not allies." Zorthal's eyes settled on a deep blue. "The situation is more nuanced than Colonel Kelly's limited data suggests. The Nix are indeed powerful, but also dangerous. Their abilities can influence minds, control thoughts. The GEUS sought to contain this threat." Before Harris could respond, a communication officer burst into the room. "General, we're receiving a direct transmission from the Void Collective leadership. They're requesting to speak with you personally, sir." "Rejected immediately," Zorthal said sharply. "Any communication with the enemy." "Play it," Harris ordered, ignoring the Chancellor. On the main screen appeared a hooded figure, features hidden in shadow. "General Alan Harris," a voice spoke. "We have observed your species' involvement in this conflict. We request a meeting, away from GU's influence. There are truths you need to hear." Harris looked at the alien Chancellor, whose compound eyes had turned a deep, angry red. The pieces were falling into place, and Harris suspected that both sides in this galactic war had their own agendas for humanity. The abandoned space station hung silently in the darkness of the Kuiper Belt, far from Earth but still within the solar system. General Harris gazed through the viewport of the small shuttle as they approached. Despite strong objections from both the GEUS representatives and Earth's Security Council, he had decided to meet with the Void Collective. "This is either the bravest or the stupidest thing we've ever done," said Colonel Kelly, who sat beside him. "Sometimes they're the same thing," Harris replied. Intelligence analyst Daniel Wright, the third member of their small team, checked his equipment nervously. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump, the airlock cycled, and the three humans stepped cautiously into the abandoned station. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows through the corridors as they made their way to the designated meeting area. In the station's old command center waited a single figure, tall and slender, wrapped in dark clothing that seemed to absorb light. The being stood perfectly still as the humans entered. "General Harris," the figure spoke, voice neither male nor female. "I am the speaker, voice of the Void Collective. Thank you for coming despite the risks." "I'm here to learn the truth," Harris said simply. "Both sides in this war want humanity's involvement. I need to know why." The speaker nodded and lowered its hood. The face beneath was striking. Pale skin with delicate features, eyes that were completely black except for pinpoints of light like distant stars. "I am Nix," the speaker said, answering the unasked question. "One of the first species to resist GEUS assimilation. Colonel Kelly discovered records about your people," Harris said. "The GEUS tried to weaponize your psychic abilities." "That is correct, but it is merely one example of their true nature." The speaker activated a holographic display showing countless worlds and species. "The GEUS is not the benevolent empire it claims to be. It is an expanding force that assimilates useful species and discards those deemed unnecessary." Images appeared of planets stripped of resources, species relocated or altered to serve GEUS needs. "The Void Collective isn't simply a rebellion," the speaker continued. "We are an alliance of species fighting for independence from GEUS control. Many joined willingly. Others were recruited like the GEUS attempted with humanity." Kelly stepped forward. "If that's true, why attack our research station on Europa? You killed innocent civilians." The speaker's expression showed genuine confusion. "We did not attack your outpost. The GEUS staged that attack to force your species into the conflict." "That's a convenient claim," Wright said skeptically. "You brought data analysis equipment," the speaker noted. "I offer our communication records, ship movements, and tactical operations from that time period. Analyze them yourself." Wright set up his equipment and began examining the data. After several tense minutes, he looked up with a troubled expression. "If these records are authentic, Their fleet was nowhere near Europa when the attack happened. Harris felt cold anger building inside him. You said the GEUS wanted to force our involvement. Why? What makes humans so valuable to both sides? Your species' approach to warfare, the speaker said simply. The GEUS wants to use your military innovation. We want to prevent it. The speaker walked closer, those strange star-filled eyes studying Harris. The Knicks have an ability you should know about. Some of us can see possible futures, not clearly, but enough to sense likely outcomes. You're saying you can predict the future? Harris asked doubtfully. We see patterns, possibilities. When humanity first contacted the GEUS, our seers immediately sensed danger. The speaker's voice grew softer. In all visions where humanity fully joined the GEUS war effort, the result was catastrophic. For the collective, Harris guessed. For everyone, the speaker corrected. Not just defeat for us, but eventually a human takeover of the GEUS itself, followed by a more terrifying galactic regime than any has experienced before. Harris felt a chill at these words. That's not who we are. It's who you could become. War changes those who wage it, General. Your own history proves this. The speaker's eyes seemed to peer into his soul. Your warning to the GEUS was prophetic. If humanity fully embraces this war, you will indeed win it. But the cost will be the soul of your species and peace in the galaxy. As Harris absorbed these words, he realized a terrible truth. Both sides had been manipulating humanity from the beginning, each for their own purposes. The Void Collective feared human potential as much as the GEUS coveted it. What exactly are you asking of us? Harris demanded. Neutrality. The speaker replied. Nothing more. General Harris stood before Earth's Leadership Council, his face showing the weight of his decision. The evidence from both the GEUS and Void Collective lay on the table before them. In the week since his return from the meeting with the speaker, the pressure had only increased. The GEUS has offered Earth unprecedented technology and territorial rights, said General Olivia Martinez, who had become the strongest voice for full military commitment. She pointed to the glowing holographic display of advanced medical equipment, faster than light drive systems, and planetary defense shields. We could leap forward centuries overnight. At what cost? Harris asked quietly. Our humanity. President Morgan studied the reports carefully. The Void Collective has provided evidence of GEUS atrocities, but they also admit to having their own agenda. They fear what we might become. With good reason, Defense Secretary Grant added. Admiral Garcia's tactics are already spreading throughout our fleet. We've won 3 more engagements using methods that horrify both sides of this conflict. Harris nodded. That's exactly the problem. Both sides have been manipulating us from the beginning. The GEUS wants to use us as weapons. The collective fears will become something worse than what they're already fighting. The room fell silent as everyone considered the situation. Earth stood at a crossroads that would shape humanity's place in the galaxy for generations. I believe there's a third option, Harris finally said. One neither side has considered. 3 days later, representatives from both the GEUS and the Void Collective arrived at the neutral location of the International Space Station orbiting Earth. High Chancellor Zor Thol led the GEUS delegation. The speaker represented the Void Collective. President Morgan welcomed them with General Harris at her side. We have considered both your positions carefully, President Morgan began. And we have reached our decision. Harris stepped forward. Earth will withdraw from the conflict entirely. We will establish ourselves as an independent, neutral power focused on building our own interstellar presence. The Chancellor's compound eyes shifted to angry red. After all we've offered, this is not a rejection. Harris interrupted. It's an alternative. Humanity proposes creating a buffer zone between your warring factions, patrolled by human peacekeeping forces. The speaker's star-filled eyes widened slightly. You would position yourselves between us. Yes, Harris confirmed. We won't join your war. Instead, we will stop it. Earth will serve as mediator for peace negotiations. Our ships will enforce a demilitarized zone. He looked directly at both alien leaders. Any aggression against human interests or violation of the neutral zone will be met with the full unleashed response we've been warning you about. You cannot force peace, Zorthol objected. We're not forcing anything, President Morgan said. We're offering a way for both sides to step back without losing face. The alternative is humanity choosing a side. I think we all understand what that would mean. The aliens exchanged glances, recognizing the veiled threat. After hours of tense negotiation, both reluctantly agreed to initial peace talks with Earth as the neutral mediator. 1 month later, Harris stood on the observation deck of the EDF Guardian, watching Earth's peacekeeping fleet deploy to their positions along the newly established neutral zone. Colonel Kelly joined him, looking out at the stars. "Do you think it will hold?" she asked. "For now," Harris replied. "Neither side wants to risk provoking us. The irony isn't lost on me. They're more afraid of our potential for violence than our actual military strength. Your warning became our greatest diplomatic tool," Kelly observed. Harris nodded. "Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one you choose not to use." Far away, on a neutral world between territories, High Chancellor Zorthol and the speaker met in secret. Despite their long conflict, both leaders shared the same thought. Humanity had proven itself more dangerous through peace than war. By forcing both sides to the negotiating table through the mere threat of what they could do if provoked, humans had carved out a unique position of power. General Harris was right all along, the speaker commented. "We should have let humanity stay detached from our war." "Yes," the Chancellor agreed reluctantly. "Because now we're fighting their peace instead." As Earth's influence expanded through diplomatic rather than military means, Harris watched carefully, ready to ensure humanity's hard-won position in the stars remained one of respected neutrality rather than feared dominance. The path forward would be challenging, but for the first time, Harris felt hope that humanity's first steps into the galactic community might not be marked by the mistakes of their past,